When we think of Ohio, we might think of our sports teams, our roller coasters, our cornfields, but starting all the way back in 1815, Ohio represented a land of hope for escaped slaves on their journey to freedom. Historians estimate that between 40 and 50,000 enslaved Americans escaped through Ohio. That's almost 50% of the total estimated enslaved people who did escape before the Civil War, all thanks to a system called the Underground Railroad. Despite the name, the Underground Railroad was not an actual railroad. It was a secret network of trails, safe houses, and guides that helped escaped slaves on their journey north to Canada, where slavery was banned. It was illegal to help escaped slaves, so the Underground Railroad used code names. For example, people who helped guide escaped slaves were called conductors, and people who helped hide them were called agents. And there were more than 1,500 agents and conductors in Ohio's history, way more than any other state. John Parker, who was formerly enslaved, was one of those conductors. He is famous for his double identity. By day, Parker ran a successful metal workshop and was an inventor. But by night, Parker would smuggle escaped slaves across the Ohio River from Kentucky. Some of his rescue missions happened right under slave catchers' noses. Once the escaped slaves got into his boat, John Parker would head for Minister Rankin, an agent whose house stood above the Ohio River in the town of Ripley. Minister Rankin would shine a lantern in his window to lead Parker and the escaped slaves across the river to safety. Minister Rankin himself was an important member of the Anti-Slavery Society in Ripley, where he was very open about his opinions. Over 2,000 escaped slaves took shelter in Rankin's house at one time or another while he was active. Today, both John Parker and Minister Rankin's houses in Ripley have been turned into museums, so you can visit and learn even more about their amazing stories. But the town of Ripley was just one example of the Underground Railroad in Ohio. There were other major stations in Marion, Mansfield, and Salem, including more than 20 stations on the Ohio River, and many of these were connected by paths to other safe houses and agents all the way to Canada. Because escaped slaves were in danger of being captured, they had to travel in extreme secrecy. During the day, they would hide wherever they could, sometimes in abandoned barns or in the woods. And when it got dark, they would walk many miles to the next safe house. Escaped slaves would do whatever it took to gain their freedom. Some would hide in the bottom of an agent's wagon. Others would disguise themselves and travel in broad daylight. One man even packaged himself into a box and mailed himself to safety. Ohio became one of the most successful Underground Railroad states. Of course, geography had a lot to do with it, with Ohio being on Lake Erie and being a central location on the Mason-Dixon line. But it is important to remember the courage of the agents, conductors, and escaped enslaved people in Ohio, who all played a crucial role.